Museum is a place where time does not matter. Looking at the artifacts, we are experiencing the most vivid and exciting moments of history. The program Secrets of Museums with Kamil Galiyev is on Kazakh TV channel. It was January of 1938. The train stopped at a small railway station amidst the vast steppes of Kazakhstan. Women got off the train. They were wearing beautiful coats and hats, thin socks and fashionable shoes. They were not ready for the extremely cold weather of minus 40 degrees. Many of them caught cold and would die in the next few days. The strongest women will survive and face many years of hard labor and sorrow. In 1938, the first victims of political repressions from all over the USSR have been delivered to Kazakhstan. Prison camp consisted of 4 barracks, surrounded by a barbed wire fence. Armed guards at towers could see every corner of the prison. Over the next 10 years, female prisoners had to work hard and suffered to make this place a diversified economy. Presently, there is a museum and memorial complex at the former campsite. It was opened in May 2007 to mark the 70th anniversary since the beginning of mass repressions in the Soviet Union. The issue of opening the museum was raised during the first meeting of the former women prisoners of the camp, which was held here in 1989. The meeting was attended by only 20 women out of 8,000 prisoners. They started to collect materials for the exposition. Former women prisoners from countries near and far abroad sent personal items, documents, and photographs. They were transferred to the museum fund. Not only the opponents of government policy, but also active public figures, as well as those who had been simply slandered, became the victims of repressions in 1937. After the People's Commissariat for Internal Affairs issued its sentence, they were shot dead, and their families were deported for long periods from 5 to 10 years. First, the largest in the Soviet Union women's forced labor camp was called the 26th Point Karaganda Camp of the People's Commissariat for Internal Affairs, but the prisoners named it differently as Alzhir, a Akmola camp for the wives of country traders. From 1938 to 1953, 18,000 women stayed at Alzhir and sent to other camps, and about 8,000 women served a sentence in Alzhir constantly. They had to serve their sentence for being mothers and sisters of those who were accused of country treason, victims of repression, public figures, and artists. Women were brought to Alzhir from all over the country first of all from Moscow, Leningrad, Kiev, and Minsk. The camp's barracks were overcrowded. The prisoners built huts for themselves using adobe bricks made from clay and straw. Women kneaded clay with feet even in the winter cold and tore the reeds with bare hands. The women prisoners turned the camp into a diversified economy with a granary and a pumping station, a farm for livestock and poultry, workshops, sewing factory. They herded sheep, grew vegetables and fruits. The prisoners completely changed the camp. Even the nearest village to the camp was named Malinovka, due to the large amount of raspberries which had been planted by the women prisoners. The best representatives of that time served sentence in the camp: artists, scientists, engineers, and teachers. Almost everyone had a university degree. Local people recollect how the women wearing hats pulled the cars loaded with garbage. Over the time, all their beauty had gone away.
А узницы приобрели лагерный вид.
Among the most famous women who served a sentence in the Alzhir, there were the wife of Turar Raskulov, Aziza Raskulova, and her infant daughter Rita, who was born in Butyrka prison, and her mother Arifa Yasingulova. The eldest daughter of Turar Raskulov, Saule, had been sent to an orphanage in Ukraine. Aziza Raskulova worked at the cattle farm as a veterinarian and was released from prison after 10 years. But her mother, who had been sentenced to 8 years, died of a brain hemorrhage in the prison. Guljamal Mylina, the wife of a prominent Kazakh writer Beimbet Mylin, herded sheep in the camp. After she had been released, she went to Karaganda, where she could not get a job. She had to make a living washing clothes and cleaning floors. But she hadn't broken her will. She finally had found her children and kept all the works of her husband. The wives of the distinguished Kazakh figures such as Saken Seyfulin, Sultanbek Kazhanov, Temurbek Jurganov, Nigmet Nurmakov, Sanjar Asfendyarov also served sentence in the camp. Russian best-loved singer Lydia Ruslanova, despite performing the songs at concerts during the wartime and having donated all her savings to buy artillery vehicle Katyusha, also had suffered repression. She was sentenced to 10 years. When Lydia Ruslanova was brought to Alzhir, the camp's senior staff ordered her to organize a concert and perform songs. However, she replied that a nightingale doesn't sing in the cage. Mother of the great ballet dancer Maya Plisetsskaya, Rachel Messer-Plisetsskaya, was also brought in the Akmola camp with her 8-month-old son. She was sentenced to 8 years. Now her son, a well-known choreographer, Azaria Plisetsky, is 79 years old, and he lives in Switzerland. But not so long ago, he visited the camp to pay tribute to his mother. Many women, after having been released, could not reach their homeland. They weren't received. Relatives and friends were still afraid to communicate with them. After all, they have the mark of 23 in their passports, which meant that they were banned entry to 23 major cities in the country. Honored art worker of Kazakhstan, a ballet dancer Tatyana Afonina, in order to raise the spirits of women prisoners in the camp, organized a dance group. It is hard to imagine, but the prisoners came to dance lessons after work, trying to keep the memories of usual life. After the release from prison, Tatyana Afonina organized a dance ensemble in Tselinograd and stayed forever in the city.
и навсегда осталась в этом городе.
For the entire period, 1,500 children had been born from the guards in the camp. They hadn't been given the names of their fathers. Some children are alive. They are 70 years old now. They write letters with a request to find the data on their fathers, but there's no such information in the archives of Karlag Karaganda Corrective Labor Camp. There is no exact information in the museum on the number of women prisoners who had died in the camp. According to the documents, the largest death rate had been registered during the first years of the camp's functioning. The weakest women died first. 22-year-old German woman Gertrude Platte had got acquainted with a Soviet student in Germany. Both were fond of politics and immediately found common interests. Soon, they married and left for Moscow. In 1938, the husband of Gertrude was sentenced to death, and she was sentenced to 5 years imprisonment in Alzhir.
После заключения женщина уехала в Германию. По одним сведениям, Гертруда...
According to some sources, in 1990, Gertrude Platte visited the village of Malinovka, where she had met the former prisoners of the camp. However, museum staff say that Gertrude Platte didn't come to Kazakhstan. She told the researchers of Boston University in Germany her story about Alzhir.
Свой рассказ об Алжире и
Afterwards, the story became a symbol of tolerance of the Kazakh people.
символом толерантности казахского народа.
Prisoners spent their winters shivering in cold. Flimsy blankets were no match for the bitter, biting cold that came creeping through the bars of windows. Many women prisoners died from pneumonia. A cold burst of wind blew as if there was no window at all. Women were overwhelmed with fear of dying. They only wished to die without pain. Women could not get warm cuddling each other. Every morning, all prisoners gathered to line up in rows, and women had to say their names and the article under which they were serving sentences. It was some kind of fun for the guards.
Заключенные, построиться! Осужденная номер 34, статья 190, часть 2, прибыла в лагерь в 1941 году.
Осужденная номер 35, статья 190, часть 2, осуждена в 1940 году.
Prisoners were punished for being sullen. The guards watched women prisoners everywhere. It was impossible to be in private and even talk without the permission of a guard. Once the guard hit a woman because she stumbled and fell, and he began to beat anyone who attempted to help her stand up. Despite this, the women helped their friend get up and moved on. The prisoners sought their salvation only in own thoughts and creativity. Women wrote poems so that gloomy thoughts wouldn't break their spirit. Sometimes they held recitals. The poems were filled with pain and despair. But not always. They believed it was impossible to chain their souls. They often wrote poems about dreams, about the high values and women's happiness. It was a late autumn, the period of cold winds. It seemed as if the nature itself welcomed fierce winter. Field works finished at Jalanash Lake. Women prisoners still had a lot of job. A small group of women, including Gertruda Plate, watched by the guards, moved towards the reeds. Guards gave prisoners sickles, and the women set to work. They had to fulfill the plan to work 17 to 20 hours a day. Reed was used in construction of barracks and for heating. Women's hands were bloody, numb fingers barely moved, but they had to work. Gertruda felt bad this morning. She had a headache and a stomachache caused by malnutrition. Pain was coming from bones and she felt leg spasms. Suddenly, Kazakh children living in the nearest village, Joly, jumped out of the reeds. They cried loudly, laughed, and teased the prisoners. Then the boys pulled stones from the bags and began to throw them at women prisoners. The guards had fun cheering kids and did not even think to protect women.
Не только мы вас ненавидим, даже дети.
The guards told women prisoners, "See, people hate you, not only in Moscow, but even here." Women felt offended. They were distressed and thought about how poorly these children had been brought up. Why did they have so much cruelty? This lasted for several minutes, and then children vanished in the thicket of reeds. Gertruda Plate was distressed for the women as they suffered unjust insult and despair. The next day, children came back again and continued to throw stones at women prisoners. Offended women quietly wiped tears away. One day, when the boys were again throwing stones at women, Gertruda stumbled. One of the stones thrown by the boys fell in front of her. She thought that the stone was unlike an unusual one. The woman picked it up and caught the smell of cheese. She realized that this flavor comes from a small solid stone. Gertruda tasted it, and it was incredible. The stone turned out to be a dried piece of cheese. After having collected these stones, Gertruda brought them to the barracks. Kazakh women said it was Kurt. Women began to thank God and pray for these children and their mothers. It is unknown who thought to throw Kurt as if they were stones, but it was the only right way to help women prisoners without attracting the attention of the guards. It's terrible to imagine what would happen to the village people if the guards revealed their secret plan. But even fear for their own children did not stop the local people in helping women prisoners. Local residents did not understand the guilt of those women and the reason the camp had been formed here near their village. They tried to help women, putting all their efforts. They still remember the horrors of famine, which themselves have experienced in the 30s. All the camps for political prisoners were terrible, say the former prisoners, but in Kazakhstani camps, many prisoners survived thanks to Kazakh people. Having suffered hardships and hunger, ordinary people have not lost their values, empathy, and desire to help fellow beings.
После закрытия лагеря
After the closure of the camp in 1953, the village where it had been located was named Malinovka because of the thickly grown raspberries planted by the prisoners. Over the years, raspberries had faded, and in 2007 it was decided to return the historical name to the village, Akmol.
Ахмол. Вы смотрели
Today, only these tall poplars remind of the labor of the women prisoners.